For years, the wind was the only voice that spoke to her. The creak of old floorboards, the distant howl of coyotes, and the echo of her own thoughts were her only company. But on one chilly dusk, as golden light faded over a quiet ranch, 12 shadows approached from the west, 11 weary strangers in uniform, and one unspoken question in their eyes. Will she let us in? What started as a silent evening turned into the moment that would rewrite her life. And if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The journey is just beginning. Ava Langley had lived alone for almost 6 years on her father's abandoned cattle ranch, tucked between whispering plains and wind-scour hills of New Mexico. Her only companions were the ghosts of memory, of laughter that once filled the kitchen, of muddy boots by the back door, of soft lullabies that no longer echoed down the hall. Life had been quiet, predictable, safe, until that evening. She was stacking firewood by the porch when she first saw them, small dark silhouettes rising through the shimmer of heat waves on the horizon. Her hand paused mid-reach. Not coyotes, not lost hikers. Soldiers. They came closer, each step more defined. 11 men in dust-covered fatigues, skin sunburnt, eyes tired but sharp. They looked like they'd walked miles. Ava didn't move, heart thudding in her chest. In a world that taught her how quickly peace could be shattered, she didn't trust strangers easily, especially not men trained for war. The one in front, taller than the rest with silver streaks at his temples and a haunted look at his gaze, stepped forward. His voice was rough, like it hadn't been used much lately. "Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble. Just looking for a place to stay the night. Just shelter." Ava scanned them. No weapons drawn. No aggression. Just bone-deep exhaustion and quiet desperation. Their uniforms bore no nation's flag, just dust, sweat, and stories written in scars. She hesitated. The rules she'd set for herself were clear. No visitors, no exceptions. But something in their presence cracked that wall. Maybe it was the way one of them limped. Maybe it was the way another shielded a younger recruit from the wind. Maybe it was the silence they carried, the kind that only came from men who had seen too much and still chose not to speak of it. "Come in," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "The barn's open. It's not much, but there's clean hay and water. You can stay the night." They nodded in thanks, no questions asked. That night, as they settled quietly in the barn and she sat by her kitchen window, watching the soft flicker of their small fire, Ava realized something strange. For the first time in years, the ranch didn't feel empty. Something had changed. She just didn't know yet. Was it fate knocking or trouble? Sometimes bonds form not with words, but with quiet routines, shared silences, passing glances, and the way people begin to exist in each other's space without forcing their presence. On her lonely ranch, Ava had built walls, but these soldiers, they weren't trying to break them. They simply waited outside, patiently, until one by one, the walls lowered themselves. The first morning was stiff. Ava woke early like always and peeked out her kitchen window. The 11 soldiers were already up. Some were sitting on overturned crates near the barn, quietly sipping from old canteens. Others were helping each other wash off days of road dust, using water from the old pump. No one had stepped inside her house. No one even approached. They respected the line she'd drawn, silently, instinctively. She brought out black coffee in mismatched mugs and a large tin of cornbread, left it on a table near the barn, then walked away without a word. They thanked her softly, but didn't follow. It continued like that for days. The men worked around the property without being asked, fixing her broken fence posts, cleaning out the clogged drainage near the barn, mending rusted tools she hadn't touched in years. They didn't treat it like payment. It was just something they did, like it was part of who they were. Gradually, the air between them shifted. Ava found herself pausing longer at the edge of the porch, watching them laugh over small things, like one of the younger soldiers tripping over a chicken, or their shared debates over the best way to chop firewood. She found herself listening, then smiling just barely. One afternoon, she caught them all standing still, facing the sunset, not talking, just watching. She didn't know why, but it moved her. That evening, she brought out stew, hot, hearty, homemade. This time, They invited her to sit. She hesitated, but then pulled up a chair. For the first time, stories came. Quietly, cautiously. One of them, Ramirez, told her about his daughter he hadn't seen in 3 years. Another, a red-haired soldier named Callan, showed her a worn notebook full of sketches he drew on the road. The tall one, whom they all seemed to defer to, introduced himself finally as Cole. His voice was calm, steady. He didn't say much, but when he did, everyone listened. Ava listened too, and she spoke a little. She told him how the ranch used to be full of noise and life. Once, her late father, her brothers, the cattle, the chaos of it all. She didn't talk about the accident or why she stayed. Not yet. But when she looked around the firelight at those strangers' faces, kind, weathered, respectful, she realized she didn't feel watched. She felt understood. And just like that, something she thought was lost began to take root again. Not trust, not yet, but something gentler, something warmer, something like hope. Every quiet place holds echoes. And on that ranch, beneath the surface of new friendships and routine kindness, secrets waited like buried embers, dormant but still burning. Some belonged to the land, others to the men she had welcomed in. But Ava had her own too, and not all of them were ready to stay buried. It began with a letter. Ava wasn't snooping. The envelope had slipped out of Cole's jacket pocket while it hung drying on the porch rail. She picked it up, intending to return immediately, but the name caught her eye, her brother's name. Evan Langley. Her hand froze, breath catching. The envelope was old, the paper yellowed at the corners, creased as if read 1,000 times. But the handwriting, it was unmistakable. Torn between disbelief and dread, she tucked the envelope into her coat. She didn't open it, not yet, but it followed her in her mind all day, pacing her like a ghost she couldn't shake. That night, her questions burned hotter than the fire in her hearth. Later, she found Cole alone by the corral, staring at the open sky, shoulders heavy with thought. "Where did you serve?" she asked him quietly, surprising even herself. He didn't look at her at first, just took a slow breath. "Afghanistan, Syria, Border Patrol, then some places I'm not supposed to name." Ava stepped closer. "Did you know Evan Langley?" His jaw tensed. Cole turned. For the first time, there was no calm in his eyes, only guilt. "I did," he said. "He saved my life." The words dropped like a stone between them. Cole told her everything. How Evan had volunteered for a mission he could have avoided. How he covered their escape under fire. How his body was never recovered. Just a bloodied ID tag, and the last message he left behind, a message for Ava. Cole pulled something from his chest pocket. A small flash drive. "He made me promise," he said. "If I ever found you, I'd deliver this myself." Ava took it with trembling fingers. Her brother's voice, gone so long, might live inside that device. And she hadn't even known this man had carried that promise all these years. Her world tilted. But secrets didn't just belong to her. That same night, she overheard hushed voices in the barn. 2 soldiers, arguing low. "We can't keep hiding it from her," one whispered. "She deserves to know." "Not yet," the other snapped. "It'll put everyone in danger." Ava backed away, heart pounding. They weren't just passing through. Something more was going on. Something none of them had told her. The next morning, the soldiers acted normal. Fixed a fence, chopped wood, made jokes over breakfast. But now she could see it. The flickers in their eyes, the coded looks, the way they deferred to Cole more like command than friendship. And as she finally gathered the courage to play her brother's message that night, Ava realized she wasn't the only one being watched. Something bigger had followed these men to her ranch. Something her brother had known. And something that still wasn't finished. Peace is often fragile, held together not by truth, but by the willingness to pretend it's enough. But Ava had seen too many cracks now. Trust was thinning, tension rising. The quiet harmony they'd built on her ranch was beginning to tremble, and no one wanted to be the first to admit why. The flash drive sat in her palm for a long time before she plugged it in. Ava waited until the ranch had gone still, until every soldier was tucked away in the barn and the fire outside had turned to ash. Then, in the glow of her laptop screen, her brother's voice returned from the dead. "Hey, Ave." Evan's voice was warm but tired. "If you're watching this, I didn't make it." Ava's breath hitched. The message wasn't long. Evan spoke of missions gone wrong, names she didn't recognize, and one specific order he disobeyed: to protect a certain group of men, the very same ones now sleeping just yards away from her home. They didn't just leave the war behind, he said. They left with something the government didn't want anyone finding. And now they're running. He paused. His voice lowered. Cole's a good man. He saved lives. But he's not telling you everything. Be careful, Ava. Don't trust anyone blindly. By the time the message ended, Ava's hands were shaking. The next morning, she didn't join them at breakfast. She avoided their eyes, her movements sharp and distant. Cole noticed first. He always did. "You okay?" he asked gently. "Fine," she answered too quickly. "Just tired." But the tension didn't go unnoticed. Conversations around the barn turned shorter, tighter. One of the soldiers, Callan, was suddenly always armed, even while fetching water. Two others stopped laughing like they used to. No one said anything aloud, but the shift was clear. Then came the drone. It appeared at dusk, a saw from overhead, too high to see clearly but impossible to ignore. Cole barked commands without hesitation. The soldiers disappeared into the barn, some emerging seconds later with duffel bags already packed. "Time's up," one of them muttered. "They found us." Ava followed Cole into the tool shed, slamming the door behind them. Her fury exploded. "You brought this here? You dragged danger to my doorstep, to my land?" He didn't try to defend himself. His voice was steady but remorseful. "I tried to leave behind. We all did. But it's not that simple." "What did you take?" she demanded. "What are they after?" Cole looked her dead in the eye. "Proof of what was done, of who gave the orders to erase people like your brother. We couldn't let them bury it. Not again." Ava's chest rose with heavy breaths. The air between them felt scorched, like a fuse had already been lit. "You should have told me," she said. "I know," he answered. "I didn't want to lose the only safe place we'd found." She stepped back, voice hard. "You already have." That night, as winds picked up across the ranch and the sound of distant engines echoed through the valley, Ava knew one truth for certain. The storm had arrived, and her home would never be the same again. When the world tilts suddenly, even the strongest lose footing. Ava had lived through loss, through silence, through rebuilding her life alone, but this felt different. The line between right and wrong had blurred, and the people she had begun to care for were now at the center of a storm she never asked for. The drone didn't return that night, but the silence it left behind was worse than the noise. Ava barely slept. Her thoughts spun endlessly. Evan's warning, Cole's confession, the soldiers' uneasy movements. Every board of her house suddenly felt too thin, every window too exposed. Her sanctuary had become a target, and she didn't know how to defend it or from whom. By morning, she was exhausted and frayed. She found Cole by the water trough, hands deep in icy water, scrubbing blood from a torn shirt. Not his blood. One of the men had cut his hand on barbed wire the night before. Cole didn't look up. He didn't say good morning. "Why didn't you leave?" Ava finally asked, voice quieter than she expected. "We tried," he answered, "but they tracked us anyway. Doesn't matter how far we run, they're always one step behind." Ava crossed her arms, staring at the muddy ground. "You said this place was safe." It was. Until now. The truth weighed between them like lead. Ava walked away without another word. That afternoon, Callan approached her while she fed the chickens. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by something vulnerable. "We never meant for this to fall on you," he said. "If you tell us to go, we'll go. No questions." She looked up slowly. The man before her wasn't just a soldier. He was young, barely 30, with tired eyes and a scar along his cheek that looked too fresh to be forgotten. "If I let you stay," she asked carefully, "what happens to me?" He hesitated. "They'll question you, watch you, maybe worse." especially if they think you know something. Ava swallowed. Her heart had begun to ache in a way she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, exactly, but deep ache of being betrayed by something larger than herself. That night, she sat alone on the back steps of the porch, eyes on the horizon. Once, she believed survival meant staying small, quiet, invisible. But now, what was she supposed to do? Turn them in? Send them off to be hunted like animals? Pretend she never cared? She ran her hands over the weatherwood beneath her, remembering her brother's laugh echoing through the fields. She remembered how he used to dare her to stand up to bullies, how he told her, "Truth matters, even if no one wants to hear it." Tears welled in her eyes. She'd built her life on silence. Now silence might destroy it. Inside the barn, the soldiers gathered in low voices, preparing for what might come next. Ava watched them through the shadows. Tired men, loyal to each other, carrying burdens the world had asked them to forget, and she felt the weight of choice pressing on her chest. Was she ready to stand with them? Or would she shut the door like the rest of the world had? Sometimes, the smallest gestures carry the loudest meaning. A shared meal, a repaired step, a quiet presence beside you when the weight becomes too much. Ava didn't trust easily. But that morning, something shifted. Not because the danger had passed, but because someone finally looked her in the eye and saw more than just shelter. They saw her. The next morning arrived on soft winds and golden light. The sky was unusually clear, and for the first time in days, no engines hummed on the horizon. No drones. No threats visible, just quiet. Ava moved through the ranch on autopilot. Feed the animals. Check the coop. Boil water. But her thoughts were heavy, still circling the choice she hadn't made out loud. When she returned to the porch, something caught her eye. The fence near the south pasture. It was new, rebuilt, sanded smooth, posts reset straight into the soil. Someone had worked all night. She turned and saw him, Cole, kneeling by the gate, hammer still in hand. "I figured it had been leaning too long," he said without turning. Felt like it deserved to stand upright again. Ava didn't respond right away. She walked over slowly, looking at the craftsmanship. Every nail was straight, every joint secure. It wasn't a patch job, it was restoration. "You didn't have to do that," she said finally. "I know," he replied, but it felt right. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ava said, "This isn't going away, is it?" "No," he admitted, "but we'll leave if you want us to." No resentment, no blame. She looked at him, really looked. Cole was worn, yes, sun-scarred and battle-heavy, but there was a quiet strength in his shoulders. Not the kind that demanded control, but the kind that held people together when everything else broke. "You could have left a long time ago," she said. "We stay because it matters." Ava's throat tightened. She thought of Evan again, of his voice on that recording, of his courage, of what it meant to carry someone else's truth when the world was too afraid to face it. She made her decision without saying it out loud. Instead, she walked the barn with him. Inside, the soldiers paused mid-task, watching her. Tools dropped. Boots stilled. Silence fell. Ava cleared her throat. "If you're staying," she said, "then you work like you belong. That means you help in the fields, you rotate night watches, and you don't keep secrets that could put this place at risk." No one objected. In fact, most of them stood taller. "We'll earn it," Callan said softly. "We already owe more than we can repay." Ava nodded once and left. That night, she placed a single candle in her kitchen window, a signal, a symbol, that the ranch, for now, was still a sanctuary. And the people inside it? Not just survivors anymore. They were a beginning. Some promises are spoken in words. Others are made in silence, with eyes that don't look away and hands that stay steady. On a ranch carved out of grief and grit, Ava didn't need vows sealed in ceremony. She just needed to know that when everything crumbled, someone would still be standing beside her. 2 nights after the drone sighting, a storm rolled in from the west. The sky turned bruised and heavy, and the wind bent the grass low like it was whispering secrets across the land. The soldiers worked quickly, tying down tarps, checking supply caches, double-securing barn doors. Ava helped not as a bystander, but as one of them. By now, the boundaries had faded. Later that evening, as the rain pounded on the tin roof and thunder rolled like distant artillery, Ava found herself sitting beside Cole near the fireplace. The others were resting or keeping quiet watch near the windows. They didn't speak at first, just watched the flames flicker. Then Cole finally said, "There's a safe route, an extraction point in the northern mountains. If the worst happens, we'll go, but you'll be protected. I'll make sure of that." Ava didn't look away. "And if I don't want to be left behind?" His expression didn't change, but his hand tightened slightly on the mug in his grip. "You deserve a life outside this, a future untouched by what we're carrying." "I've already been touched by it," she said softly. "My brother gave his life for this. For you." Cole didn't argue. He just nodded, once, a deep, quiet acceptance of truth. "You remind me of him," he said, "not in how you look, but in how you decide things, slow but unshakable." Ava looked into the fire. "I used to think safety came from closing doors. Now I'm not sure that's living." He set his mug down, and for the first time, she saw in his eyes the weight of every life he'd failed to save and the depth of what he was trying to protect now. "I made a promise to Evan," he said, "but I'm making another one now. To you." She turned toward him. "I will not let them destroy this place. I won't let them take away the peace you built here. Not again." For a long time, the only sound was the storm battering the windows. Then Ava whispered, "Then we fight smart. We don't run scared." Cole gave a slow nod, and though no handshake sealed it, no grand gesture declared it, the promise between them was real, carved not in ceremony, but in understanding, in the firelight, in the storm. Later, as she walked the halls checking each window and latch, Ava felt something new settle in her chest. Not peace, not yet, but certainty. They were no longer just sheltering together. They were preparing, together, and that changed everything. Even in the shadow of coming danger, life finds a way to bloom, in laughter that escapes when no one expects it, in the quiet comfort of shared work, in the fleeting moments where fear is forgotten and something lighter takes its place. Ava didn't go looking for joy. It simply returned when she stopped pushing away. The days that followed moved with a strange rhythm, part tension, part calm. The soldiers trained quietly behind the barn, practicing drills with makeshift gear, always watching the sky. Ava attended to the animals, checked the fence lines, and mapped escape routes through the dry creek bed. It should have been exhausting. But somewhere in the middle of all that seriousness came a day of rain. Not a storm, not a warning, just soft, steady rain. The kind that smelled like earth and memories. That morning, Ava baked. She hadn't done that in months, maybe years. But something about the quiet, the clouds, and the smell of cinnamon made her reach for the old recipe book her mother had left behind. By noon, the kitchen was full of warmth and spice. She stepped outside holding a tray of warm apple biscuits, already feeling strange about it, like joy was too fragile to offer out loud. But as soon as the soldiers caught the scent, something shifted. Callan was the first to break the spell. "Ma'am," he said, eyes wide with theatrical reverence, "if there's heaven, it smells like whatever that is." The others burst out laughing. Even Ava smiled, a real one. They sat on the porch, passing around the tray, crumbs falling between muddy boots. No one talked about escape plans. No one scanned the horizon. Instead, Ramirez pulled out a battered harmonica and began to play a slow, mournful tune. A few others clapped along out of rhythm, and one, the youngest Jensen, stood up and began a clumsy two-step in the muddy grass. Ava laughed, really laughed, when he tripped over his own boot and nearly fell into a chicken. Cole, sitting beside her, just shook his head with a quiet grin. "You'd never believe half of them trained with special ops," he murmured. "I don't know," she replied. "They seem pretty dangerous with that harmonica." He chuckled, a sound she hadn't heard from him before. It was deep, unguarded. It reached a part of her she hadn't realized was still listening. For a few rare hours, they were just people, not fugitives, not survivors, just tired souls who needed a reminder that life wasn't over yet. Later that evening, Ava found a small bundle left outside her door, Hand-carved wooden spoons made from pine branches near the property line. No note, no explanation, just a quiet thank you. She didn't ask who made them. She simply placed them in her kitchen jar like they'd always belonged there. And for the first time in years, as she looked around a table filled with muddy boots, loud laughter, and the smell of wood smoke and fresh biscuits, she didn't feel alone. She felt home. It's easy to stand together in the calm, when the sun is soft and the world feels kind. But time tests more than patience. It wears on nerves, unearths buried doubts, and asks, will you still choose each other when things begin to unravel again? On the ranch, the cracks began to show, and every choice mattered. Story approximate 500 words. The good days didn't last forever. Ava knew they wouldn't. The drone returned, not once, but twice. This time, it didn't pass overhead. It hovered, tracked. The men took shift sleeping. The barn was reinforced. The fire pit was buried. They began preparing like soldiers again, not house guests. And it wore on them. Tensions rose. Quietly at first, shorter answers, longer silences. But soon, arguments sparked like dry twigs. We need to move before they close in, Callan said one night, pacing. And leave her behind? Ramirez snapped. That's not what we agreed to. She never agreed to stay in this fight. Ava stood outside the barn, hearing every word. She didn't walk in, didn't interrupt, but her chest burned. Later, when she passed Cole near the woodpile, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. You promised we'd face this smart, she said. I did. Then why does it feel like I'm being decided for again? Cole rubbed a hand over his face, fatigue etched deep into his features. Because I don't want to put you through hell. You don't get to shield me from it anymore, she replied. Inside the house, things weren't much better. A pipe burst under the sink. The freezer failed. 2 of her horses got spooked by the scent of something strange near the north fence. Dogs, maybe. Or scouts. And Ava, she began to question herself. Why had she let them stay? What if she was only prolonging the inevitable? One night, she sat alone in the dark, holding the carved pine spoon someone had made her, turning it in her hands. She remembered the silence of the ranch before they arrived, the kind that echoed inside her chest. She thought she preferred it then, but she didn't. The laughter, the warmth, the noise, it had made her remember who she used to be. Someone strong, someone not afraid to take up space. Now, the silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the sound of what she stood to lose. The next morning, she found Jensen by the barn. His eyes were red. He didn't try to hide it. I dreamed I went home last night, he said softly. Except when I got there, it wasn't home anymore. It was just a memory, like it had never been real. Ava didn't know what to say, so she just sat beside him on the porch. And that more than orders, more than plans, reminded both of them why they stayed. Because hope wasn't just something you found. It was something you chose, even when time tried to wear it down. Here's the next section. Not all beginnings start with a clean slate. Some are carved from what's left after the damage is done, shaped by lessons learned, trust rebuilt, and the quiet courage to move forward anyway. Ava wasn't the same woman who opened her door to 11 strangers. And now, her ranch wasn't just a refuge. It was a reason to begin again. The night they expected the raid, nothing came. No lights, no engines, no movement in the trees. Just wind, stars, and waiting. The soldiers remained alert well past sunrise, eyes trained on the ridge line, radio silent, weapons close. But by midday it became clear. The threat had passed, or at least paused. They didn't celebrate, but they exhaled. Ava stood with Cole near the barn as the sky brightened. They both looked older somehow, not in years, but in weight. The kind that settles in the bones when you've been waiting too long for something to go wrong. But it didn't. Not that day. Instead, a letter arrived, delivered by hand, not from the enemy, but an ally, a local veteran who still wore his service cap like armor. He passed it to Cole, nodded once, and walked away. Inside the envelope was a name, a location, a contact who could help move them to safer ground. No questions asked, off-grid, clean IDs. A second chance. Cole read it once, then folded it and slid it into his pocket. I'm not taking them, he said to Ava quietly. Not yet. She didn't ask why. That afternoon, Ava led the way to the northern field, the one overgrown with wildflowers and untouched since her father's passing. She handed out gloves, handed over tools, and said one word: fence. They didn't question. They worked side by side, clearing brush, setting posts, tying line. The men worked like they belonged, like they had something to protect, not just escape from. And when it was done, Ava stood at the edge of the field and saw something she hadn't in years. A future, not guaranteed, not easy, but possible. That evening, Cole found her at the edge of the corral, watching the sky. You sure about this? He asked. I'm not sure about anything, she said, but I know this place has more to give. And so do we. He nodded. Then we stay until it's time. Later that night, someone started a fire, not for heat, not for survival, just because it felt right. Ramirez strummed a tune on a broken guitar. Jensen sang off-key. Someone passed around a flask. Ava sat with them. No longer separate. No longer silent. Just present. The ranch, once a graveyard of memories, now breathed again. It creaked with life, with motion, with promise. It wasn't a perfect beginning, but it was theirs, and that made it real. Certainly, here's the next section. Some acts of love aren't loud. They don't come with speeches or grand goodbyes. They come with a look, a step forward when everyone else steps back, a choice made in silence. Ava had already lost once. She thought she was prepared. But no one's ever truly ready when someone decides to give up everything so others don't have to. It started with movement in the woods. Barely noticeable. A flash of glass in sunlight. A twig snap where no animal would tread. Cole noticed it first. Then Ramirez confirmed it. Someone was watching them again. This time, it wasn't a drone. It was boots on the ground. Ava gathered the men in the kitchen. The walls that had once felt too big now felt crowded. Not with fear, but with readiness. We don't have much time, Cole said. We stick to the plan. Quiet exit. No resistance. But something was wrong. Too quiet. Too careful. When they scouted the South Trail, their safest escape route, they found it blocked. Tracks in the dirt. Tire marks from military vehicles. Their window was closing. I can lead them off, Ramirez offered. Double back. Draw their attention. No, Cole said firmly. We move as one. But hours later, when they packed and prepared to slip away, Ramirez was gone. He left no note, no sound, just one of Ava's pine-handled spoons resting on the kitchen counter, a goodbye only she would understand. Cole found his tracks heading north, away from their escape route, toward the ridgeline where the watchers had been. Ramirez had made his decision. By nightfall, the gunfire started, distant, sharp, but unmistakable. A single man's fire drawing attention, forcing pursuit. He bought them 20 minutes. 20 minutes was enough. The rest moved fast. Through the creek bed, up the slope, along the narrow cut between the rocks. No lights. No talking. They didn't speak of him. Not yet. They reached the extraction point just before dawn. A battered van waited, engine low, its driver silent. The soldiers boarded. Ava stood beside Cole, looking back at the hills. He knew they'd never stop, she said. Cole nodded, jaw clenched. And he knew we never would if he didn't. Later, when they reached a safe house buried deep in the mountain woods, no one cheered. They unpacked. They rested. They waited for a knock that would never come. That night, Ava lit a single candle and placed it in the window, just like she had the night she let them stay. This time, it burned for the one who didn't return. No medals, no names on walls, just a silence that would always echo differently. She didn't cry, not then, but she sat beside the flame until dawn. And in that quiet glow, surrounded by those still breathing, Ava understood. Some homes are protected not by fences or walls, but by those willing to walk away from them, so others don't have to. Not all endings are loud. Some arrive like a breath after a long silence. Steady, bittersweet, full of all the things that were lost and all the things that still remain. Ava's ranch was gone now, in the way all places change when they're marked by love, loss, and something greater than survival. But what stayed was enough. Weeks passed in the mountain-safe house. The soldiers repaired what they could. Gear, wounds, spirits. The silence between them no longer felt tense. It was respectful, earned, shared. They had survived, but none of them were the same, especially Ava. Her boots still carried dust from her ranch, but her steps no longer hesitated. She helped cook. She helped scout. She stood at watch when the others needed sleep. She had been a stranger once, a quiet woman guarding a broken home. Now she was something else entirely. One evening, Jensen handed her a wooden box, carefully carved, stained, sealed. Inside was Ramirez's harmonica. "We figured he'd want you to have it," he said. "You gave him the only piece he'd had in years." Ava held it gently, fingers tracing the worn edges. She didn't speak, but she nodded once, and the message passed between them like a promise. Cole found her later, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching the trees sway in the mountain wind. "They'll come again someday," she said. "Won't they?" He didn't lie. "They might. And we'll be ready? We will." He stood beside her, shoulder brushing hers. "There's talk of a tribunal," he said after a pause. "Real justice. The data we carried, it's moving through the right hands now. Slowly, but it's moving." Ava looked at him. "And if it doesn't work, then we keep going, one truth at a time." It wasn't a grand ending. There were no medals, no news broadcasts, no redemption written in headlines. But there was something better. Every morning they woke up alive. They built new routines. They found a plot of land where vegetables could grow. They hunted when they needed, laughed when they could. And in the quiet hours before dawn, Ava sometimes took the harmonica outside, sat on the porch, and played a low, clumsy tune into the trees. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. In time, the soldiers stopped being guests. They became something closer to family. New fences went up, not to keep danger out, but to mark a place rebuilt with intention. Walls were raised, rooms added. The safe house turned into a home. Not just hers, not just theirs together. And somewhere in the hush between memory and mourning, Ava found it. Peace. Not the kind that forgets pain. The kind that holds it, learns from it, and sings anyway.